Okay, let's talk about Vanguard Zombies. You know, it's funny, for a mode that indisputably contains the least amount of content out of any zombie season up to this point, it's one that I find the most interesting to discuss and engage with. I mean, how? How could something this unacceptably bad come to fruition? I don't even hold the same amount of hate and resentment towards this mode as most people in the community do, simply because I find it so fascinating. Everything from its intriguing but underdeveloped story, gorgeous visual direction, and of course, loads upon loads of wasted potential. Back when Call of Duty Vanguard first launched, I was actually the game's biggest defender. Sure, there may be no main quest, sure these characters repeat the same thing 10 times because the studio didn't bother recording many voice lines.
Professor, it is time to bid your toy soldiers auf Wiedersehen.
Sure, there may be no one weapon, sure there's no fucking pack camo. But all of that will come in the near future, along with future quality maps. I was open-minded as to what Treyarch had up their sleeve. Then the next map came out. There was an Easter egg quest, but there weren't any actual steps, no boss fight, and no outro cutscene. There was a one weapon, but it did fuck all. There were 2 new objectives actually, and those were the last 2 added into the game. This was around the time when I finally sat back and went, huh, we're fucked, aren't we? Suffice to say, Vanguard's launch was an unbridled disaster, and most of the backlash stems from its odd objective-oriented gameplay. You see, Outbreak ruffled a couple of feathers of its introduction in Cold War, but it wasn't the main selling point of that game. There, you still had 4 other classic round-based experiences that retained what everyone loved about the gameplay loop of zombies. Here, however, Treyarch wanted to try a different approach and create an experimental Outbreak-like mode that was intended to be more fast-paced, exciting, and most of all, refreshing. The marketing leading up to Dawnfang's release hyped it up as this grand, epic new direction for the series that would challenge players like never before. Instead, what we got was Outbreak, but on a way smaller scale with significantly less polish and even less to do than before. There wasn't even a fucking pause option for solo players like myself. Worst of all, there was nothing to satisfy those who preferred round-based and wanted a more traditional experience. Nothing. About 2 months in, they added a round-based supplement to Dawnfang, but it honestly felt like more of an afterthought because, well, it was. And then we got Terra Maledicta, and despite its many setbacks, it at the very least was a step in the right direction, since it did feature more zombie staples and had stuff to actually do. But at this point, players had already dropped like flies and there wasn't any buzz surrounding this mode. In response to this, Treyarch shocked everyone. They announced that the next installment in this uncertain season would be a round-based recreation of Shino Numa. No bullshit, no strings, an actual fully fleshed out round-based map. People were still skeptical, but the map released, and you know what? It was kinda fun. Every map in Cold War outranks it, but for what it was, there was a lot of enjoyment to be had. A main quest, a buildable one weapon that was actually useful, interesting story revelations. Things were looking good. Maybe, just maybe, Vanguard could at least stick the landing. Then the Archon came out. I shit you not, these motherfuckers took Terra Maledicta and just copy and pasted it as the 4th and final map in the season. The only difference is this one is round-based and has a green filter. That's it. Oh, you think this is a recreation of Terra Maledicta like Classified was to 5 or how Shino Numa Reborn was to the original with a slightly different layout and new areas? No, I mean it's literally the same map. All of the perk fountains are in the same fucking location. Treyarch justified this by saying they wanted to focus all their efforts on the final boss, and I mean, it's an okay boss fight with some neat spectacle, but that's it. It's not mechanically engaging, and it doesn't even touch any of the boss fights before the Dark Ether timeline. Mephistopheles makes this supposed grand climax look like a proof of concept. And mind you, that was a secret optional battle, a part of a fully original map that already had one, in a game full of original maps with epic boss confrontations. I know that's unfair, and look, I'm not blaming Treyarch. They clearly had no time and no budget to put together something they're proud of, but they seriously tried every step of the way to please fans and make something fun. But they simply couldn't with their circumstances. Despite that, I do think there are some things that they could have done differently. This brings us to my main argument of this video, and I'm interested to see if any of you agree or disagree. I don't think Vanguard should have gone round-based, instead, I think it should have stuck with objective-based gameplay.
Are you out of your mind?
Just hear me out. Yes, going the Outbreak route and so casually disregarding fans of round-based was a bad decision, and proceeding to not market the game as a side thing, an experiment, but rather as the next evolution of zombies was an even worse decision because it set expectations way too high. But the game is out, there was nothing Treyarch could do, so what's the next move? Well, I'm gonna be honest, Terra Maledicta was the perfect next step. Because yes, while I liked a lot of content, it still added a lot to not only it, but also Duanfang. A ray gun, a new sub-boss, both the sacrifice and purge objective, and a small quest was even added in retroactively. With all the new features Terra Maledicta introduced, it served to make Duanfang a more fleshed out experience. I meant when I said, Vanguard has a lot of missed potential. That's because even though this new direction alienated round-based players, it still worked in its own right and could work as its own thing if the player were given more to do. The issue wasn't the concept, the issue was the execution. The lack of content, the lack of basic zombie staples. Had Treyarch stuck to their guns, instead of 2 original maps, a remaster, and a remaster of a map in the same game, we'd have likely gotten 5 original maps, each with their own locations and identity. I want you to remember how Outbreak and Cold War looked at launch and compare it to its post-launch status. Entirely different thing now, right? Well, imagine Duanfang with varying objectives, multiple sub-bosses, potentially new areas, a variety of wonder weapons, and whatever else could come with more and more updates. The same thing applies to Terra Maledicta. Had Treyarch not abandoned their already existent formula and instead focused their efforts towards fleshing it out and adding more to it, I think the game could at least be respected for its myriad of new ideas and mechanics, and how it fully utilized them to its strength. But no, instead, Vanguard will forever be remembered as that one game where the devs gave up midway through and catered for the safer option, which resulted in a lackluster finale. And don't get me started on how this shift in direction impacted the story. I'm unsure of exactly how much of the narrative Treyarch has planned beforehand, but given how cleverly and intricately written these games are, especially including Cold War, which was the title that finished its yearly cycle just months before Vanguard's release, it's safe to say the writers at least have a general roadmap on where they want things to go. But after Terra Maledicta, man, you could tell the writers were just trying to do the best they could with things outside their control suddenly changing around them. They had to give up all current plans and find a way to fit Shino Numa into this new timeline, and with the Archon, they had to somehow end all of these loose threads they set up with 5 cents in a dream as their budget. So, Quarterfex's portrayal of Von List, while in character, feels incredibly rushed. Von List teleporting inside of Kraft's office is so fucking convenient and contrived, it makes my brain hurt. Von List dies unceremoniously off-screen, and Quarterfex the Destroyer, this all-powerful god who has been built up the entire season, is killed in an easy boss fight and dies in an unintentionally hilarious way as he falls to his death off in the distance. Oh, and the story has no ending. I'm not bullshitting you, there's no ending to the game. Quarterfex dies, there's some brief dialogue, and that's it. It's not even like World War II Zombies, where after the fall of the God King, Rideau confirms this newfound revelation about the Ravens and the Cycle in this chilling final epic speech. No, Kraft just goes hooray, and that's it. They remembered the exposition, rising action, climax, and falling action, but they forgot the fucking resolution. I'm sure this rushed and botched ending to an otherwise engaging and fascinating story is because of the 180 the mode did. And I think if Treyarch had focused on fixing what didn't work instead of rushing to replace it so quickly, we could have had a semi-decent season despite the unfair circumstances. Overall, just let Vanguard be a lesson to any of you aspiring creatives out there, whether you're an aspiring artist, writer, game designer, or whatever. Don't be so quick to throw away ideas. Try to make them work. If you write a first draft and someone hates it, don't throw it out, improve it. If you do a sketch and someone thinks it doesn't look good, don't abandon the illustration, simply make another sketch until it's up to your standards, then move on to the finished thing. With this mentality, we could have been looking at an entirely different Vanguard. But, oh well. Anyways, did you guys like this video? If so, don't forget to leave a like and comment your thoughts. Me and Blitz would both greatly appreciate it. Thank you for watching, peace out.